Zakaria was so excited that day. Accompanying his mother, they were on their way to the shrine of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in Medina. Little Zakaria was following his mother's blessings on Holy Prophet Muhammad in a syntax specifically used by Shia Muslims. The innocent kid was just minutes from being brutally slaughtered by the fanatic Takfiri taxi driver simply because he was a Saudi Shia kid. He pulled the car over, grabbed the child away from his mother, and slit his throat with a piece of broken glass as his mother was watching and screaming. No one intervened. No response from Saudi authorities is issued thus far. It is like nothing has happened. Welcome to Real Saudi Arabia 2019. Zakaria Badr al-Jabir is neither the last nor the youngest victim of the teachings of Saudi muftis against other Muslims. His grisly killing, like many other criminal acts against religious minorities in Saudi Arabia, was simply brushed under the carpet thanks to the Western mainstream media's silence over the issue. Virtually no sections of the Western press have covered it the way it deserved.
This is insane. If this type of news went on the mainstream media, like full on, you have the BBC, CNN, CNBC, etc. covering it, CNN, then the reality will be that people will get extremely shocked. And people will be against their governments, the British government, the American government, French, German, etc. The people will be strongly against anyone doing any sort of transaction with the Saudis.
The public practice of any religion other than Wahhabism is prohibited in Saudi Arabia, and the Shia branch of Islam is regarded as the most oppressed Islamic faction in the country. For decades, Shia Muslims have been subject to significant political, economic, legal, social, and religious discrimination, including limited employment and educational opportunities, underrepresentation in official institutions, restrictions on religious practice, and restrictions on places of worship and community centers. These come as social and political observers argue that systematic persecution and oppression of Muslim minorities in Saudi Arabia is way beyond a simple domestic policy. The general contempt of Shias in the kingdom is by no means a hidden phenomenon and is deep-rooted in the regime's true nature. Since the creation of ISIL, when people across the globe were shockingly watching gruesome footage of beheadings and crucifixion, those familiar with Takfiri mindsets could easily identify near-identical norms and acts between the terrorists and the House of Saud. As a matter of fact, it is now evident that ISIL was created by the House of Saud, planning for a fatal moment against Shias well over a decade ago. In 2014, the Independent newspaper published details of a conversation between the former head of Saudi intelligence and the former head of the British Secret Intelligence Service, MI6, which hinted at an imminent widespread sectarian onslaught against the Middle Eastern Shias. In the conversation, which originally took place shortly after the 9/11 attacks, Bandar bin Sultan clearly asserts, "The time is not far off in the Middle East, Richard, when it will be literally, God help the Shia. More than 1 billion Sunnis have simply had enough of them." In a matter of a month, flames of Takfiri terrorism engulfed the region. What was ongoing as systematic discrimination and abuse against the kingdom's Shias was also being pursued at full force. Upon bin Salman's rise to power and the silent coup in Saudi Arabia and reformation of political sides inside the House of Saud, Shia Muslim crackdowns intensified.
De facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, has shown his intention to be as brutal, if not more brutal, than his predecessors. The question is, how long can Saudi depend on this corrupt nexus of international power to keep them going?
In 2017, the regime enforced a brutal and bloody crackdown in the Al-Ghatif region, where the majority of Shia citizens reside. The city was sieged by the army for over 3 months, with electricity and water lines cut off to its 26,000 residents. Despite a total media blackout, leaked news and footage from the cordoned area were suggesting crimes against humanity. At the end of the military siege, Awamiya was more like ISIL-controlled Mosul in Iraq and Raqqa in Syria than a rich city on oil.
This area is important to the Saudi regime, despite the fact that they are of having a relatively small population, because it challenges, or partly ideologically, it challenges the dominance of the Wahhabist ideology. Even after all these decades of bloodthirsty rule, the Wahhabist ideology that came to power as the theological adjunct to the dictatorship of the Al Saud family has failed to stamp itself on certain areas of the country. The border with Yemen is one of them, and Sheikh al-Nima's area is another, and of course being adjacent to the Persian Gulf and close to the ongoing rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Qatar raises further strategic questions for Saudi as well. So it's important ideologically as a challenge to the hegemony of Wahhabist ideology. It's also important strategically.
Just at the same time, the regime-affiliated Wahhabi muftis were also providing religious and moral justifications for ISIL and other Takfiri terrorists' crimes in Iraq, Syria, and beyond.
These ideologies have, like I've said, they have no basis within Islam. There is no Islam within these ideologies. These ideologies are discussing aberrations, insults to Islam. They have more of a basis in the time of Jahiliyyah, the time of ignorance in the pre-Islamic time, before Prophet Muhammad's advent.
The Saudi regime's abuse of religion is not simply restricted to the oppression of Shias inside and outside its borders.